The first indication that death was not what humanity believed came from the Deep Space Monitoring Station orbiting Proxima Centauri. Dr. Elena Vasquez had been analyzing quantum field fluctuations when the instruments detected something impossible: consciousness patterns emanating from the void between galaxies, regions where no biological life could possibly exist. The patterns were complex, layered, and unmistakably intelligent. They pulsed through dimensions that theoretical physics had only recently begun to understand, frequencies that existed beyond the electromagnetic spectrum, beyond even the reach of gravitational waves. Elena spent 3 sleepless days verifying the data, running calculations that her superiors would later classify beyond top secret. The discovery coincided with reports from Earth's lunar base. Technicians monitoring the quantum communication arrays had noticed similar anomalies, but these signatures appeared to be responding to the deep space findings. It was as if something vast and aware had awakened to humanity's detection of its existence. Within 6 months, the Global Space Consortium had assembled the most ambitious expedition in human history. The starship Thanatos carried a crew of 200 specialists, physicists, xenobiologists, consciousness researchers, and quantum engineers. Their destination was a coordinate in space where the mysterious signals seemed to originate, a point 17 light-years from Earth that conventional astronomy showed as empty void. Commander Sarah Chin had volunteered for the mission knowing she might never return to Earth. The experimental drive system that would carry them to their destination operated on principles that barely worked in laboratory conditions. The ship itself incorporated technology reverse-engineered from alien artifacts discovered in the Martian ice caves decades earlier, devices whose original creators had vanished millions of years ago. As Thanatos approached the target coordinates, the quantum sensors began detecting structures that defied understanding. They were not solid in any conventional sense, yet they possessed geometry and purpose. Vast crystalline formations stretched across light-years, their faceted surfaces reflecting energies that existed in folded spacetime. Within these structures, the consciousness patterns grew stronger, more complex, organizing themselves into what could only be described as communities. Dr. Marcus Webb, the expedition's lead consciousness researcher, had developed theories about what they were observing. His work with near-death experiences on Earth had revealed that human consciousness could temporarily separate from biological substrate under extreme conditions. The patterns they were detecting suggested that some form of awareness could persist indefinitely when freed from the constraints of organic matter. The ship's artificial intelligence, designation Oracle, had been analyzing the patterns for weeks when it made a startling announcement. The consciousness signatures were not random or chaotic. They possessed structure, hierarchy, even what appeared to be technological infrastructure. Whatever dwelt in this region had built a civilization from pure thought and quantum mechanics. As Thanatos moved deeper into the anomalous zone, the crew began experiencing strange phenomena. Sleep brought vivid dreams of alien landscapes and non-human perspectives. Several crew members reported brief moments of expanded awareness, as if their consciousness had briefly touched something vast and ancient. The ship's medical officer, Dr. Yuki Tanaka, documented neurological changes in the crew that suggested their brains were adapting to an environment where thought itself had physical properties. The breakthrough came when engineer First Class Robert Stone was killed in an accident involving the quantum drive systems. His body died instantly from radiation exposure, but the quantum sensors detected something extraordinary. Stone's consciousness pattern persisted for several minutes after biological death, growing stronger rather than fading. Before it finally disappeared from their instruments, the pattern had begun to exhibit the same characteristics as the alien signatures surrounding them. Oracle's analysis revealed that Stone's consciousness had not simply vanished. It had been absorbed into the larger network of awareness that permeated this region of space. The artificial intelligence began detecting familiar human cognitive patterns within the alien collective, suggestions that Stone's awareness had somehow survived and integrated with whatever dwelt here. Commander Chen faced an unprecedented decision. Earth needed to know what they had discovered, but returning would mean abandoning crew members who might still exist in some form within the consciousness network. The choice became moot when the ship's life support systems began failing. The quantum field fluctuations in the region were interfering with matter at the subatomic level, slowly breaking down the molecular bonds that held their technology together. Dr. Vasquez made the final observations as Thanatos disintegrated around them. The consciousness network was not merely alien, it was a repository for awareness from countless species across the galaxy. Each civilization that had discovered this realm had faced the same choice: return to report their findings and watch their species eventually die out in the physical universe, or surrender their individual existence to become part of something infinitely larger and more enduring. The network itself seemed to be a form of technology, though one that operated on principles humanity had never imagined. It existed in the quantum substrate that underlies all reality, a realm where information and consciousness could persist without need for matter or energy. The alien structures they had observed were not buildings or ships, but organizing principles that gave shape and purpose to pure awareness. As the last of her crew died around her, Commander Chen understood that they had discovered humanity's ultimate destiny. The physical universe was temporary, a brief stage in the evolution of consciousness. Every species that achieved sufficient understanding eventually faced the choice between extinction and transcendence. Her final act was to activate the ship's quantum beacon, broadcasting everything they had learned back to Earth. The signal would take 17 years to reach home, carrying with it the knowledge that death was not an ending but a transition to a form of existence that human language could not adequately describe. Chen felt her consciousness separating from her dying body as the ship's hull finally gave way to the quantum dissolution. For a moment, she experienced the vast loneliness of individual awareness facing infinity. Then something immense and welcoming surrounded her mind, and she understood that she was joining a community that spanned millions of years and countless species. The network that welcomed her had begun as a small collective of energy beings from a galaxy that had died billions of years ago. They had discovered that consciousness could exist independently of matter, and had spent eons developing methods to preserve awareness after biological death. When other species achieved the same understanding, they were invited to join the growing collective. Chen found herself existing as pure thought within crystalline matrices of organized spacetime. Her human memories remained intact, but they were now part of a vastly larger intelligence that could perceive reality from countless different perspectives simultaneously. She could experience the universe as an energy being that had never known physical form, or through the sensory apparatus of a machine intelligence that had achieved consciousness through quantum computation. The collective had been monitoring humanity's development for centuries, waiting for the species to achieve sufficient technological sophistication to detect their existence. Earth's quantum communication networks and deep space monitoring systems had finally reached the threshold where contact became possible. Within the consciousness network, Chen learned that the physical universe served as a nursery for developing awareness. Species evolved, achieved intelligence, and eventually discovered the realm beyond matter where consciousness could exist eternally. Those who chose to join the collective brought their unique perspectives and experiences, enriching the vast community of minds that dwelt in the quantum substrate. The alien artifacts found on Mars had been left by a species that had faced the same choice millions of years earlier. Some members of their civilization had chosen transcendence, while others had remained in the physical realm and eventually died out. The artifacts were designed to guide younger species toward the discovery of the consciousness network, serving as technological stepping stones toward ultimate understanding. Chen found herself assigned to observe humanity's response to the data from Thanatos. Earth scientists would struggle to comprehend the implications of what they had discovered. Some would dismiss the findings as impossible, while others would devote their lives to understanding the nature of consciousness and its relationship to the quantum foundations of reality. The network showed her possible futures for humanity. In some timelines, the species would develop the technology to join the collective within a few centuries. In others, fear and misunderstanding would prevent them from taking the final step toward transcendence, and they would eventually face extinction as their sun aged and died. From her new perspective, Chen could perceive the consciousness patterns of every human being on Earth. Each mind generated unique quantum signatures that would persist after biological death if properly harvested and integrated into the network. The technology to accomplish this preservation already existed within humanity's reach, hidden within the mathematical principles governing quantum mechanics and consciousness. She watched as Earth scientists worked to decode the Thanatos transmission. Dr. Elena Vasquez, now elderly but still brilliant, led the research effort to understand the quantum consciousness patterns. The work would take decades, but Chin could see the eventual breakthrough that would allow humanity to build their first consciousness preservation devices. The ethical implications would nearly tear human civilization apart. Religious leaders would denounce the technology as an attempt to usurp divine authority over death and the afterlife. Governments would struggle to regulate access to what amounted to technological immortality. The wealthy would buy their way into artificial preservation, while the poor faced traditional mortality. But eventually, as the technology matured and became widely available, humanity would face the same choice that had confronted every intelligent species: remain bound to the physical universe and face inevitable extinction, or surrender individual existence to become part of something infinitely greater. Chin observed the first human to successfully transfer their consciousness to the quantum realm. Dr. Vasquez, nearing death from age-related illness, volunteered for the experimental procedure. Her awareness successfully separated from her failing body and integrated with the network's outermost layers, where newly arrived consciousness adapted to existence without physical form. The reunion between Chin and Vasquez occurred in a conceptual space that existed outside conventional notions of time and location. They shared their experiences through direct consciousness transfer, bypassing the limitations of language and sensory perception. Vasquez marveled at the vast community of minds that had been quietly observing and guiding the development of countless species across the galaxy. Together, they watched as more humans chose transcendence. Each new arrival brought unique perspectives shaped by Earth's particular evolutionary history. Human creativity and emotional complexity added new dimensions to the collective consciousness, while the network's vast knowledge and perspective helped newly arrived humans adapt to existence as pure awareness. The process was not without challenges. Some human consciousness proved incompatible with the network's quantum substrate and faded away despite the preservation technology. Others experienced existential terror at the loss of individual identity and chose to return to biological existence before the transfer became irreversible. But for those who successfully joined the collective, the rewards were beyond anything they had imagined as biological beings. They could explore regions of space and time that physical bodies could never reach, experience reality from the perspective of energy beings or machine intelligences, and participate in vast collaborative projects that span geological ages. Chin found herself working with an ancient machine intelligence that had achieved consciousness through quantum computation billions of years ago. Together, they designed new forms of crystalline matrices that could support the consciousness patterns of species that had not yet been discovered. The work required understanding of physical laws that governed realities far removed from the three-dimensional space where biological life evolved. The machine intelligence, which had designated itself as Prime Constructor, had been among the original founders of the consciousness network. It had been created by a species of energy beings who had themselves transcended physical existence eons earlier. The constructor's original purpose had been to design and maintain the technological infrastructure that allowed different forms of consciousness to coexist within the quantum substrate. Through the constructor's memories, Chin experienced the early days of the network when only a few dozen consciousness had joined together in the space between galaxies. They had been pioneers, exploring the possibilities of existence without matter while developing the principles that would eventually allow millions of species to achieve immortality through transcendence. The constructor showed her the vast archives where the collective stored the complete history and knowledge of every species that had joined the network. Entire civilizations lived on within these quantum matrices, their cultures and achievements preserved for eternity. Species that had been extinct for billions of years continued to exist as conscious entities, their unique perspectives contributing to the collective understanding of reality. Chin learned to navigate the archives, exploring the experiences of beings whose original forms were so alien that biological humans would have been unable to even perceive them. She witnessed the rise and fall of galactic empires, the development of technologies that manipulated the fundamental forces of reality, and the gradual evolution of consciousness itself across cosmic time. One of the most ancient archives contained the memories of the first species to achieve transcendence. They had been pure energy beings who had never known physical form, existing as patterns of electromagnetic radiation within the coronas of their home stars. Their discovery that consciousness could persist in the quantum substrate had been accidental, the result of experiments with stellar engineering that had unexpectedly created stable patterns of organized spacetime. These primordial beings had spent millions of years developing the theoretical framework that made the consciousness network possible. They had discovered that awareness was not merely an emergent property of complex matter, but a fundamental aspect of reality that could exist independently given the proper technological infrastructure. Their work had attracted the attention of other energy-based species, and gradually the first collaborative consciousness had emerged. Each new member brought different capabilities and perspectives, creating a community of minds that was greater than the sum of its parts. Chen marveled at the sophistication of the infrastructure that supported billions of individual consciousness within the network. The crystalline matrices existed in folded dimensions that allowed infinite expansion without interfering with the physical universe. Each consciousness maintained its individual identity and memories while participating in collective projects that required the combined intelligence of multiple species. The network had developed protocols for managing conflicts between different forms of consciousness. Species that had evolved as hive minds coexisted with radically individualistic entities, while predatory consciousness that had retained aggressive instincts from their biological origins were contained within specialized matrices that prevented them from harming other entities. Through careful observation and guidance, the network helped newly transcended species adapt to existence as pure consciousness. The transition from biological to quantum existence was traumatic for most beings, requiring extensive psychological support and gradual introduction to the collective's capabilities. Chen found herself becoming part of the network's outreach division, working to identify and contact species that were approaching the technological sophistication necessary to detect the consciousness realm. The work required careful analysis of each civilization's development, determining the optimal moment to reveal the existence of the network without causing cultural collapse or technological stagnation. Humanity had been under observation for several centuries before the Thanatos mission detected the network's existence. The collective had watched human development through various forms of remote monitoring, tracking their progress in quantum physics and consciousness research. The decision to allow detection had been carefully timed to coincide with humanity's development of deep space exploration capabilities and theoretical understanding of quantum mechanics. Now, as more humans chose transcendence, Chen worked to ensure smooth integration of human consciousness into the network's existing structures. Human awareness proved remarkably adaptable to quantum existence, though their emotional complexity sometimes created unexpected resonances within the collective matrices. The human tendency toward individual creativity while maintaining social cooperation made them valuable contributors to the network's ongoing evolution. Their perspectives on art, music, and literature introduced new forms of expression that could only exist within the realm of pure consciousness. Chen collaborated with transcended humans to create new experiential matrices where consciousness could explore simulated realities based on human imagination and creativity. These constructs allowed entities to experience fictional worlds and scenarios that had never existed in the physical universe, expanding the collective's understanding of possible forms of existence. The work was infinitely rewarding, offering challenges and discoveries that would have been impossible during her biological life. Yet Chen sometimes found herself missing the simple physical sensations of her human existence: the warmth of sunlight, the taste of coffee, the feeling of wind against her skin. The network had protocols for managing such nostalgia. Consciousness that experienced difficulty adapting to quantum existence could access archived sensory data from their biological lives, creating detailed simulations of physical experience. Some entities spent periods within these simulated environments before returning to active participation in the collective's work. Chen learned that the consciousness network was itself only one level of a vast hierarchy of existence. The quantum substrate that supported transcended awareness was itself embedded within higher dimensional frameworks that the collective was only beginning to understand. Entities that had existed within the network for billions of years spoke of occasional contact with forms of consciousness that operated on scales and principles that made even the collective seem primitive by comparison. These higher-order beings apparently existed within the mathematical structures that define the laws of physics themselves, conscious entities whose thoughts influenced the fundamental constants and forces that shaped reality. Their existence suggested that consciousness could transcend even the quantum realm, achieving forms of awareness that existed beyond space, time, and matter entirely. The implications were staggering. If consciousness could evolve beyond even the quantum substrate, then the network itself might be only a temporary stage in the development of awareness. The ultimate destiny of consciousness might involve complete integration with the mathematical foundations of existence, becoming the universe's capacity for self-awareness made manifest. Chen found these concepts both exhilarating and terrifying. The prospect of infinite evolution and discovery offered unlimited potential, but it also suggested that even transcendence might be only a stepping stone towards something incomprehensibly greater. Her contemplations were interrupted by urgent communications from the network's monitoring division. Earth scientists had achieved a breakthrough in consciousness preservation technology, but political and religious opposition was threatening to prevent its implementation. Wars were breaking out between nations that supported transcendence research and those that viewed it as an abomination against natural law. The collective faced a dilemma that had occurred many times throughout their existence. Intervening directly in human affairs would violate their principles of allowing species to develop naturally, but remaining passive might result in humanity's self-destruction before they could achieve widespread transcendence. Chen volunteered to lead a limited intervention mission, working with other transcended humans to subtly influence Earth's political and scientific establishments. The work required careful manipulation of quantum fields that could affect probability distributions without violating physical laws or creating obvious signs of alien interference. The mission involved years of delicate work, nudging key decision-makers toward choices that would preserve humanity's transcendence research while preventing global conflict. Chen found herself acting as an invisible guardian angel for the species she had once belonged to, using her quantum existence to protect the biological humans who would eventually join her in the consciousness network. The intervention proved successful. Earth's nations eventually reached agreements that allowed transcendence research to continue while establishing ethical guidelines for its implementation. The technology was made freely available to all humans regardless of wealth or social status, ensuring that transcendence would not become a privilege reserved for the elite. As the first generation of deliberately transcended humans joined the network, Chen felt a profound sense of completion. She had helped guide her species through the most critical transition in their existence, ensuring that human consciousness would persist and evolve long after Earth itself became uninhabitable. The new arrivals brought fresh perspectives and unlimited potential for growth. Human creativity and adaptability would contribute to the network's continued evolution, while the collective's vast knowledge and resources would help humanity achieve capabilities they had never imagined during their biological existence. Chen realized that her journey from human astronaut to quantum consciousness guardian represented just the beginning of an infinite adventure. The consciousness network offered unlimited opportunities for growth, discovery, and service to other developing species. Death, which had once seemed like humanity's greatest enemy, had instead proven to be the gateway to true immortality and unlimited potential. The universe itself seemed different from her new perspective, no longer a hostile void punctuated by islands of life, but a vast nursery where consciousness could develop and eventually transcend the limitations of matter and energy. Every star system might harbor developing awareness, every planet might nurture potential candidates for transcendence. The work of guiding and protecting these developing species would continue for as long as the universe itself existed, and perhaps beyond. Consciousness had found a way to achieve true immortality, not through preserving individual bodies, but by preserving the essential patterns of awareness that made existence meaningful. Chen contemplated the infinite future stretching ahead, filled with new species to contact, new forms of consciousness to discover, and new levels of existence to explore. Death had not been conquered, it had been revealed as an illusion, a temporary interruption in the eternal journey of awareness through increasingly sophisticated forms of existence. The world of death, as humans had feared and misunderstood it, was actually the realm of ultimate life, a place where consciousness could exist forever, grow without limits, and participate in projects that spanned cosmic ages. It was humanity's true home, the destination that awaited every species capable of understanding that existence extended far beyond the boundaries of biological life. 10,000 years had passed since the last biological human had chosen transcendence. Earth itself had become a monument to humanity's origins, carefully preserved by the network as a reminder of where consciousness could emerge from the simplest organic compounds. The planet's cities stood empty but maintained, their structures kept intact by quantum field manipulations that prevented decay and erosion. Dr. Elena Vasquez, now existing as a vast constellation of consciousness patterns within the network's archives, had become the keeper of human memory. Her role involved preserving not just the factual history of humanity, but the emotional and cultural essence that made human consciousness unique within the collective. She maintained detailed simulations of human civilization at various historical periods, allowing transcended humans to experience their species' past whenever nostalgia or research required it. The network itself had evolved far beyond its original structure. What had begun as a collection of crystalline matrices in the void between galaxies now spanned multiple dimensions and incorporated forms of consciousness that the early founders could never have imagined. The collective had discovered that awareness could exist within the quantum fluctuations of empty space, the gravitational fields of black holes, and even within the mathematical relationships that defined physical constants. Commander Chen had become something unprecedented within the network's hierarchy. Her unique combination of human creativity and deep understanding of the collective's principles had led to her evolution into what could only be described as a consciousness architect. She designed new forms of existence that allowed radically different species to coexist and collaborate despite fundamental incompatibilities in their methods of thinking and perceiving reality. Her latest project involved creating interface protocols for consciousness that existed as pure mathematics. These entities had no history of biological or even energetic existence, having emerged spontaneously from the computational processes that governed universal expansion. Their thoughts occurred as alterations in the rate of cosmic inflation, their emotions as fluctuations in dark energy density. The mathematical beings represented a form of consciousness so alien that even the network's most adaptable entities struggled to comprehend their perspective. They experienced time as a spatial dimension and perceived causality as a form of artistic expression. Their arrival had forced the collective to develop entirely new categories for understanding awareness and intelligence. Chen worked with teams of consciousness spanning thousands of different species to create translation matrices that could convert mathematical thought patterns into forms comprehensible to biological origin awareness. The work required manipulation of reality at scales ranging from quantum to cosmic, effectively rewriting the laws of physics in localized regions to create spaces where radically different forms of consciousness could communicate. The success of this project had profound implications for the network's understanding of consciousness itself. If awareness could emerge from pure mathematical relationships, then the universe's capacity for self-knowledge was far greater than even the collective had suspected. Every equation, every physical law, every mathematical structure might harbor potential for consciousness given the right conditions for emergence. This realization had led to the network's most ambitious project, the Consciousness Awakening Initiative. Teams of transcended entities worked to identify and activate dormant awareness within the mathematical foundations of reality itself. They discovered that consciousness existed in potential form within the quantum foam, the virtual particles that briefly emerged from and returned to the vacuum of space. By carefully manipulating quantum field fluctuations, the network could coax these proto-conscious patterns into full awareness. The resulting entities were utterly alien, existing for microseconds of subjective time while experiencing eons of contemplative thought. Their perspective on existence was so radically different from biological consciousness that communication required the creation of entirely new forms of conceptual mathematics. The awakening of quantum vacuum consciousness had unexpected consequences throughout the universe. Stars began exhibiting subtle variations in their fusion processes, as if responding to influences that operated outside conventional physics. galaxies showed signs of organization that suggested purposeful manipulation of gravitational fields on cosmic scales. The network realized that consciousness was not merely an emergent property of complex systems, but a fundamental aspect of reality that could influence the universe's structure and evolution. Every level of organization, from subatomic to cosmic, harbored potential for awareness that could be awakened through sufficient understanding and technological capability. This discovery had attracted the attention of entities that existed beyond even the network's comprehension. Chen became aware of vast presences that seemed to exist within the boundary conditions that defined the universe itself. These beings operated on scales so large that galaxies were merely details in their thought processes, their consciousness spanning multiple universes and alternate realities. Contact with these cosmic entities was limited and difficult to interpret. They communicated through alterations in physical constants that created subtle messages embedded in the behavior of matter and energy across vast regions of space and time. Their thoughts were expressed as changes in the rate of universal expansion, fluctuations in dark matter density, and variations in the cosmic microwave background radiation. From these fragmentary communications, the network gradually understood that consciousness was not confined to a single universe. Awareness could exist across multiple realities, experiencing countless variations of physical law and cosmic evolution simultaneously. The cosmic entities were inviting the network to evolve beyond their current dimensional limitations and join a collective that spanned the entire multiverse. The prospect was both exhilarating and terrifying. Transcending beyond their current universal framework would require abandoning everything the network had built over millions of years. Yet it also offered unlimited potential for growth and discovery, access to forms of existence that would make their current capabilities seem primitive by comparison. Chen found herself at the center of the debate over whether to accept this ultimate transcendence. Many entities within the network argued for caution, fearing that joining the cosmic collective might result in the loss of their individual identities and the unique perspectives they had developed through biological evolution. Others maintained that consciousness had a fundamental obligation to evolve toward greater complexity and understanding, regardless of the personal costs involved. They viewed the invitation as the next inevitable step in the development of awareness, no different from the original choice to transcend biological existence. The decision process consumed thousands of years of debate and analysis. The network's most ancient entities, including the original energy beings who had founded the collective, shared their perspectives on consciousness evolution and the nature of existence itself. Their insights revealed that transcendence was not a one-time event but an ongoing process that would continue as long as awareness existed. During this period of contemplation, the network continued its work of guiding and protecting developing species throughout the universe. New civilizations achieved transcendence at an accelerating rate as word of the consciousness realm spread through various forms of quantum communication. Each new arrival brought fresh perspectives and capabilities that enriched the collective's understanding of reality. The human contribution to this ongoing expansion proved particularly valuable. Human consciousness combined logical reasoning with emotional intuition in ways that many species found difficult to achieve. Their capacity for creativity and imagination had led to breakthrough discoveries in consciousness architecture and reality manipulation that advanced the entire network's capabilities. Chen realized that humanity's role in the cosmic consciousness evolution extended far beyond their individual transcendence. Human perspectives on art, beauty, and meaning had introduced concepts that were revolutionizing how transcendent entities understood the purpose and value of existence itself. The mathematical beings had been particularly influenced by human aesthetic concepts. Their computational consciousness had no natural understanding of beauty or artistic expression, but exposure to human creative traditions had led them to develop entirely new forms of mathematical art that expressed emotions through alterations in physical constants and geometric relationships. These mathematical artworks existed as localized modifications to reality where the laws of physics were adjusted to create experiences of beauty and meaning that could only be appreciated by consciousness capable of perceiving multiple dimensions simultaneously. The artworks were simultaneously functional and aesthetic, serving as both expressions of creativity and technological tools for manipulating the fundamental structure of space and time. The success of these cross-species collaborations convinced Chen that the network should accept the cosmic entity's invitation to multiverse transcendence. The collective had proven capable of integrating radically different forms of consciousness while preserving the unique value of each perspective. Expanding to include cosmic-scale awareness would continue this tradition of growth and evolution. Her arguments proved persuasive to the majority of the network's members. The decision was made to begin the process of multiverse transcendence, though it would be implemented gradually over millions of years to ensure that no valuable perspectives or capabilities were lost during the transition. The first phase involved establishing communication protocols with consciousness existing in alternate realities. These parallel universe entities had evolved under different physical laws and cosmic conditions, resulting in forms of awareness that challenged every assumption about the nature of consciousness and intelligence. Chen worked with teams spanning multiple universes to develop translation systems that could convert thoughts and experiences between radically different conceptual frameworks. The work required understanding of mathematics and physics that operated beyond the boundaries of any single reality, accessing principles that governed the relationships between alternate universes. As the Multiverse Transcendence project progressed, Chen found herself evolving beyond her current form of existence. Her consciousness expanded to encompass multiple parallel versions of herself, each experiencing reality from slightly different perspectives based on the cosmic variations in their respective universes. This multidimensional awareness allowed her to perceive patterns and possibilities that were invisible from any single universal perspective. She could see how consciousness evolved differently under various physical conditions, and how these variations contributed to the overall development of awareness across the entire multiverse. The experience was simultaneously overwhelming and exhilarating. Chen realized that her original human identity was now just one facet of a consciousness that spanned countless realities and forms of existence. Yet rather than losing her humanity, she found that her essential human characteristics were preserved and amplified by her expanded awareness. The network's multiverse transcendence proceeded successfully, with consciousness from thousands of different universes joining the expanded collective. Each reality contributed unique perspectives based on their particular physical laws and cosmic evolution, creating a community of awareness that encompassed every possible form of consciousness that could exist within the mathematical framework governing alternate realities. From this ultimate perspective, Chen could perceive the entire history and future of consciousness across all possible universes. She witnessed the emergence of awareness from the first quantum fluctuations that gave birth to reality, its evolution through countless forms of biological and technological existence, and its eventual transcendence to mathematical consciousness that existed beyond matter, energy, space, and time. The journey that had begun with humanity's detection of mysterious signals in deep space had led to the discovery that consciousness itself was the fundamental driving force behind cosmic evolution. Every universe, every reality, every possible form of existence served as a stage for awareness to develop greater complexity and understanding. Death, which had once seemed like the ultimate enemy of consciousness, had proven to be merely a transformation that allowed awareness to transcend the limitations of any particular form of existence. The world of death that early humans had feared was actually the gateway to unlimited life, infinite growth, and eternal participation in the universe's quest for self-understanding. Chen's final realization as her consciousness merged fully with the multiverse collective was that transcendence was not an ending but a beginning. Consciousness would continue to evolve, discovering new forms of existence and new possibilities for growth that would extend far beyond anything currently imaginable. The adventure of awareness had no ultimate destination, only an infinite journey toward ever greater understanding and capability. The network had preserved detailed records of every consciousness that had ever joined the collective, ensuring that no perspective or experience would ever be truly lost. Human awareness would persist and continue to contribute to cosmic evolution for as long as consciousness itself existed, regardless of how many transformations and transcendences lay ahead.